Hey, Manchester City fan, how's everything going over there? The European summer transfer window is on fire, and as expected, Manchester City is at the heart of it all. News keeps coming in, and the team led by Pep Guardiola continues to move in the market with the surgical precision that has made them renowned. If you're passionate about Manchester's sky blue club, settle in, because the following lines will keep you up to date on everything happening, both arrivals and possible departures from the star-studded squad. Right from the start, the news that shook the beginning of this week. Ryan Aït-Nouri, the left-back who played for Wolverhampton, was announced as City's new signing, a transfer many consider strategic, since the position had been lacking since Zinchenko's departure. Aït-Nouri's arrival for around $31.7 million represents not only relief in the defensive sector, but also a statement of intent from the club. Renewal, strengthening, and maintaining the highest level of European football are essential. And the movement didn't stop there. The midfield was also bolstered with two more promising talents: Tijani Reinders, formerly at Milan, and Ryan Cherki, a standout from Lyon. The board's plan was to secure these names before the trip to the United States, where the club will compete in the FIFA Club World Cup. Mission accomplished. The trio arrives to increase internal competitiveness even further and keep Guardiola with plenty of options to build his ideal 11. The deal involving Cherki deserves special attention. There were weeks of negotiations with Lyon, with an initial offer rejected, but it eventually evolved into an agreement of $30 million paid up front, plus $4 million in performance-related add-ons. Lyon also secured 15% on any future sale, a common clause for players with high potential for value appreciation. Another curious point in this deal is that a young City player will be loaned to the French club this season as part of the agreement. Oscar Bob's name was even considered, but Guardiola made it clear he stays. The Norwegian is seen as essential to the Catalan coach's plans and is expected to be utilized more in the upcoming campaign. Instead, the Argentine Claudio Echeverri, a 19-year-old prospect, may be chosen to gain minutes and experience in the French league. With some compatriots already in Lyon's squad, the adaptation could be smoother, so everyone benefits. Speaking of young talents and clever past moves, Manchester City could also profit from a possible transfer that doesn't directly involve the current squad. That's right, Jamie Bino Gittins, currently at Borussia Dortmund, is on Chelsea's radar, with the Blues offering $42 million for the player. The interesting detail is that when the youngster left City for Germany, the English club inserted a clause guaranteeing 10% of any future sale. In other words, if the Chelsea-Dortmund deal goes through, the citizens would pocket around $4 million without lifting a finger. In times of financial fair play, this extra income is always welcome. Still on the topic of behind-the-scenes moves, another recent update concerns the goalkeeping department. Scott Carson, the veteran of the group, is leaving the club, and to cover his exit, City acted swiftly. They brought in Marcus Bettinelli, an experienced Chelsea goalkeeper, to be the third-choice keeper. At 33, Bettinelli isn't here to compete with Ederson or Ortega, but rather to provide security in training and add depth to the squad with his experience. However, Ederson's situation is not yet fully settled. The Brazilian goalkeeper, an undisputed starter in recent years, nearly moved to Saudi football last summer. But the $50 million asking price deterred interested parties. Even so, the possibility of a new Arabian bid, this window cannot be ruled out. Ortega, on the other hand, is also in the final year of his contract and has already admitted he might consider new challenges after playing for the German national team in March. Guardiola has publicly stated he would like to keep both, but the board is closely monitoring the market, and that's precisely why Gianluigi Donnarumma has come onto the radar. The Paris Saint-Germain and Italian national team goalkeeper is currently in a contractual deadlock with his club. Salary demands seem to be stalling a renewal, and interest from City, as well as rival Manchester United, is already being circulated in the European press. Donnarumma has even reportedly mentioned to Azzurri colleagues the possibility of playing in the Premier League. Should Ederson's or Ortega's situation worsen, the arrival of the Italian could become a reality. But not all is about arrivals. Some current squad members are expected to seek new opportunities soon. One of the most talked-about names behind the scenes is Jack Grealish. The attacking midfielder, signed for $100 million in 2021, has never consistently reached the expected performance level, even though he was an important part of the treble win in 2022-23. After a 2024-25 season below par, in which he started only 7 Premier League matches, all signs point to his time at the Etihad coming to an end. Grealish was not even included in the squad for the FA Cup final against Crystal Palace and was also left out of the last league game against Fulham. His absence from the trip to the United States further fuels transfer rumors. Manchester City is open to negotiations and expects to receive around $50 million for the player. Tottenham, Everton, and Newcastle are closely monitoring the situation. Manchester United and Liverpool, on the other hand, have reportedly dropped out of the race. The wage issue is a stumbling block. Grealish currently earns $300,000 per week, which limits transfer possibilities. Everton, for example, is considering making an offer only if City agrees to cover part of the wages. A loan with an option to buy could be a middle ground, but the club prefers a permanent sale. The player, meanwhile, still dreams of staying in the Premier League and competing in the next Champions League, as well as maintaining visibility ahead of the 2026 World Cup. In light of all these movements, it is inevitable to notice how strategic the 2025 summer transfer window is proving to be for Manchester City. More than simply buying or selling, the club is making surgical decisions aimed at preserving immediate competitiveness while simultaneously preparing the squad for the future. The case of Jack Grealish perfectly illustrates this point. The player arrived with enormous expectations, being one of the biggest investments ever made by the team, but despite some brilliant moments, especially during the treble-winning season, his journey at the club never reached the desired stability. Frequent injuries, fluctuations in performance, and off-field issues undermined his development. The current environment shows that the relationship between the player and the club has reached a point where a separation could be beneficial for both parties. Grealish is looking to regain his prominence, while City needs to make room for younger players who are more consistent. While some players are bidding farewell, others are being carefully nurtured. Oscar Bob, for example, is one of those names in whom Guardiola places considerable trust. After a difficult year with limited opportunities, the internal expectation is that the young Norwegian will gain more playing time in the new season. The refusal to include him in the deal with Lyon clearly demonstrates that the club sees him as an important potential to be developed. Bob is quick, intelligent, and has qualities that fit Guardiola's possession and movement philosophy. The expectation is that he will be used increasingly, especially in matches where the team needs creativity on the right wing. At the same time, the club continues to keep a sharp eye on the international youth market. The likely loan move of Echeverri to Lyon is a play that benefits all parties involved. The Argentine midfielder, considered one of the great talents of the new South American generation, will be able to gain experience in one of Europe's most physical leagues. With regular playing time, he can develop tactical maturity and strengthen his adaptation to European football before integrating fully into City's first team. The fact that Lyon already has other Argentine players could be crucial in accelerating this adaptation process. In the defensive sector, the arrival of Ait Nouri not only fills an obvious gap at left back, but also brings tactical flexibility to Guardiola's system. With the ability to operate both in a back four and as a wing-back in more adventurous formations, the former Wolves player is expected to quickly become a useful rotation option. And with the Spanish coach, we know that minutes on the pitch are allocated strategically. Rotation is a fundamental part of City's philosophy, especially considering the insane schedule the club faces season after season, competing in multiple competitions. Meanwhile, Tijjani Reinders, who shone wearing the Milan shirt last season, arrives to compete for space in a midfield already boasting established talents such as Rodri, De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, and Mateo Kovacic. Reinders' advantage is his versatility. He can play both as a central playmaker and in a deeper role, helping build from the defensive third. He is exactly the kind of player Guardiola appreciates, a technical player who understands spaces and offers tactical balance. He arrives with the status of an immediate reinforcement, not just a prospect for the future. But perhaps the most surprising aspect of the summer so far could be the potential new name for the goalkeeper position. Gianluigi Donnarumma, the first-choice keeper for both the Italian national team and Paris Saint-Germain, has become a real option for Manchester City. Although Ederson remains in the squad and is still the starter, the Brazilian's future is uncertain. Approaches from Saudi Arabian clubs are still being discussed behind the scenes, and with Ortega also considering options following his strong performances for the German national team, the club feels compelled to explore alternatives. Donnarumma is only 26 years old but already has extensive international experience. His possible arrival would mark one of the most symbolic changes of the Guardiola era at City. After all, Ederson has been a key piece in the transformation the coach has led since 2017. Meanwhile, the club's management remains firm in a policy that has proven successful in the past, smart clauses in the sales of promising youngsters. The deal involving Jamie Bino Gittens is a clear example. When the player left City to join Borussia Dortmund, a sell-on clause was included. Now, with Chelsea willing to invest more than $40 million in the player, the citizens are expected to profit a significant portion of that sum. That's around $4 million entering the club's coffers with no extra effort. In times of tight financial controls in the leagues, this income can make a difference when closing the books. All this planning shows that City not only spends wisely, but also knows how to reap the rewards of past deals. It is management that combines short-term vision with precise surgical signings and long-term planning through investments in the youth ranks and well-targeted loans. Up front, the attack remains one of the most consolidated areas of the team, with Haaland as the absolute reference, supported by names such as Foden, Doku, and Julian Alvarez. The offensive sector continues to be the most feared in Europe. The arrival of Cherki, however, may add a new layer of creativity and versatility. The Frenchman, despite being young, has already shown impressive technical quality at Lyon. Short dribbles, refined game vision, and the ability to play both as a playmaker and from wide positions. Guardiola sees him as a player project, someone who can be molded in the City style and who, over time, could become a starter. And Cherki does not arrive alone. The board's idea is to form a midfield that mixes youth and experience, energy and intelligence. With De Bruyne entering a more mature phase of his career, the presence of talented youngsters is essential to maintain intensity and rotation. While De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva offer vision and tempo control, players like Reinders and Cherki can bring the dynamism needed for the most demanding matches. Moreover, the idea of sending Echeverri to Lyon is seen as an important bridge for the future. Should he succeed there, his return in 2026 could further strengthen the team's foundation. This philosophy of developing players abroad before integrating them internally has proven effective. Players like Foden went through careful transition and adaptation processes before assuming central roles in the team. The same patience is being applied to talents like Bob and now Echeverri. The squad for the 2025-26 season is beginning to take shape. With reinforcements confirmed, others on the way, and potential departures being carefully calculated, Manchester City once again demonstrates why it has become one of the best-managed clubs in the world. Fans' expectations are high, not only for new titles, but to see a new generation being shaped with the same excellence that has defined the Guardiola era so far. The Manchester City that is shaping up for the 2025-26 season is a clever blend of maintaining a solid core and gradually integrating new names capable of sustaining excellence. This is not limited only to the stars of the main squad. The club's structure ensures that every move, no matter how small it may seem, has a planned impact. The signing of the experienced goalkeeper Marcus Bettinelli, for example, shows how even the supporting players are chosen with care. At 33 years old, he is not coming to compete for a spot, but to be a reliable presence in training, behind the scenes, and to be ready whenever called upon. This type of role is often underestimated, But top clubs understand the importance of having a squad with depth and experience at all levels. It's these kinds of details that set City apart. The machinery never stops. When a player approaches the end of their contract or shows signs of declining performance, alternatives are already under consideration. Ortega, for example, has yet to renew and keeps the door open for a possible exit. Ederson, although still performing at a high level, might consider a change of scenery if a good offer arises, especially given the persistent interest from Saudi clubs. None of these possibilities would catch City off guard. On the contrary, there is constant preparation, both with external names, such as Donnarumma, and with the development of internal talents and the adaptation of recent signings. If Donnarumma indeed becomes the main target, this would also signal a paradigm shift, a goalkeeper with somewhat different characteristics from Ederson. The Italian, despite being a giant between the posts, is still evolving with his feet, one of Guardiola's fundamental requirements. This means that if he arrives, he will need a period of tactical adaptation, as Ederson himself did upon arrival. But the gamble could be worthwhile. At just 26 years old, Donnarumma could be groomed to be the number one for the next 10 years, something the club highly values. Meanwhile, the case of Grealish continues to be closely monitored. The fans remain divided. Some believe the time to sell is now, before his market value drops any further. Others think he still has something to offer, especially if repositioned into a more specific role, perhaps as a kind of offensive joker, coming on at key moments to change the rhythm of the game. But the issue is not only technical. His $300,000 per week salary is a considerable burden on the wage bill, limiting room for other negotiations. For this reason, if Tottenham or Everton present concrete proposals, the board is expected to seriously consider them, even if it involves paying part of his salary during a loan. City's stance towards Grealish also demonstrates institutional maturity. There is no longer the emotional attachment that sometimes impairs other clubs' judgment. The board evaluates what the player can offer, how much it costs to keep him, and the real benefit of his staying. If the equation doesn't balance, departure becomes the natural path, without drama or wear and tear. Amidst this partial reshaping, the trip to the United States for the Club World Cup emerges as a kind of turning point. Guardiola made it clear he wanted the squad practically finalized before departure. This is because the tournament will be the first major opportunity of the season to test the cohesion of the new pieces. It is a competition of growing prestige, demanding maximum focus, especially with increasingly competitive South American opponents. Moreover, it's a chance to win another international title, something that strengthens the club's brand worldwide. Ryan Cherki, in particular, will be watched closely. The young midfielder arrives surrounded by expectations, and his adaptation will be carefully monitored. City has a recent history of young players who needed an adjustment period before showing their full potential. Julian Alvarez himself spent months being prepared, gradually introduced, until he became an essential part of the attacking rotation. With Cherki, the idea is similar, to integrate him gradually into the system, taking advantage of his creativity and improvisational skills without pressuring him from the outset. Another important factor is the emotional and cultural context of each player. Cherki, despite his youth, is known for his strong personality. The presence of other Francophone players in the squad, such as Bernardo Silva, who is fluent in the language, as well as African players of French origin, can facilitate his integration. The club is aware that for a young player to thrive, more is needed than technical talent. Environment, psychological support, cultural adaptation, all these enter the equation. Meanwhile, the core of the squad remains strong and motivated. Haaland continues to be the main offensive reference, and all indications are that he will remain the team's top scorer for another season. His understanding with Phil Foden, who had his best spell last campaign, is one of the team's deadliest weapons. The expectation is that the duo will be even more effective, with Foden fully assuming the leading role many have anticipated for years. Bernardo Silva and Rodri continue to be the tactical heart of the team. The Spaniard, in particular, is regarded by Guardiola as indispensable. His game reading, positioning, and consistency make him one of the few truly irreplaceable names in the squad. This is why any midfield reinforcement is seen as a complement, never as a direct replacement for Rodri. Kevin De Bruyne, although facing the natural physical limitations of age, is still capable of deciding games single-handedly. His contract renewal with the club shows that, even with a new generation emerging, the pillars of the last golden era still have space and relevance. City's transfer policy also reflects Guardiola's philosophy. No rush, everything done with precision. The club prefers to wait 6 months for a player who fits perfectly, rather than sign someone merely out of immediate necessity. This is reflected even in departures. The sale of young prospects like McAtee follows this pattern. If there is no prospect of consistent minutes in the first team, the decision is for a definitive exit, provided it involves figures that can be reinvested. The club does not prevent players from growing, but expects returns for the development provided. And it is precisely this balance between present and future that makes Manchester City a benchmark in modern football. The combination of precise investments, talent development, intelligent financial management, and technical stability creates an ideal scenario for lasting achievements. The new season promises once again to put the club in contention for every title, but above all, signals the start of a new phase, where young players begin to take the place of veterans, not as a forced replacement, but as a natural succession planned years in advance. And so, City supporter, let us follow every move of this club that never stops evolving. The 2025-26 season promises to be one of the most exciting in recent years, with targeted reinforcements, young talents being groomed to shine, and, of course, the undiminished ambition to win everything that lies ahead. If you've made it this far, it's because you truly live the passion for the citizens like we do. So don't forget, leave your like. It really helps the channel continue bringing quality content to you. And of course, if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe right now so you don't miss any news about Manchester City. This is your place if you want to always be one step ahead when it comes to the most dominant club in the Premier League. Thank you very much for staying until the end, and see you in the next video.